Is it just me, or is it harder to spot toxicity when it's within your own family? And I say that because when you've been raised a certain way, right? Especially from like infancy to adulthood, when you've been raised in a specific environment, things become normalized. And it takes a certain amount, or like it takes a prolonged amount of life experience before you realize like the things that happened growing up weren't normal. You know what I mean? And not even in a sense of like, of it being abuse, just it being, okay, I don't know what that was, but just it being like extremely toxic behavior. Like, yeah, I remember one time, and it just, I remember one time, and I stopped going to family events a long time ago. Like even before my spiritual journey, I stopped going to family events because I just really didn't want to be bothered. I just didn't want to be around so much fakeness. You know what I mean? Like I remember growing up, and, not that I don't love my grandma. I love my grandma. Without her, I wouldn't be here, right? She is a maternal part of our lineage. But I just remember her being like the woman who would go to church and would like smile in everybody's face, and then would be one of the first ones talking about these, like she would sit there and have a whole conversation with someone. And as soon as that person turned their back, she was talking about them, like a dog. And it didn't even just stop to like outside people. It was within our own family. Like my grandma I love her, I do, but she's so messy. And I feel like family members don't understand when I say like I don't want to be bothered with family events, and they're like, well, that's family. Like, you have to be there for family. Like we don't have a choice, but we do. I absolutely do. I don't have to do anything. You know what I mean? Like I don't have to attend family events just because it's family if I know it's just going to be a bunch of mess. Like I don't want to spend my off time dealing with a bunch of mess. If I wanted to deal with a bunch of mess, I would just sign up for more hours at work. At least there I'm getting paid for it. There is no benefit to being involved with a bunch of family mess. Just because it's family does not make it a benefit. I remember growing up, and my grandma would like talk really, really bad about one aunt to another aunt, and then would turn around and talk really bad about that aunt to the other aunt. And I'm like, but both of these are your daughters. Like if you see issues with something that one of your daughters is doing, if you see issues with something that another one of your daughters is doing, as a mother, why not pull them aside and speak to them as their mother instead of gossiping about them behind their backs? Like, I just don't understand that. This is literally the type of grandmother who will call to be like, oh, I'm just checking up on you. How is this going? How is this going? How is that going? Only to turn around, and next thing you know, I'm getting calls from cousins like, oh, I heard this happened and this happened and that happened. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, how did you hear that? Oh, I heard it from my mom. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't speak to your mom about that. So there's no other person that could have come from other than my grandma. Because, this is the grandma on like my paternal side of the family. So I know it's not my mom that's running to, my aunts on my paternal side of the family. So it has to be her. So it gets to the point where like when she would call and ask, how's everything going? Great. No matter what's going on, no matter what I'm going through, the answer is always going to be great. Because you've proven that you're not someone that someone can confide in and feel safe with, because you just want any sort of gossip you can get your hands on. I remember my last time going to a family event. I remember, and this was years ago. I was an adult. This was like post college. This was, me being a full grown adult. And I remember we normally, one of my aunts has like a really, really, really big, nice house. Like it's 3 stories. She has a complete finished basement. So it's technically like 3 stories, right? So I remember back when I was a teenager, we did Thanksgiving at her house one time. She had this is the type of aunt who like tends to host and do events anyways. So she had like foldable tables and foldable chairs and like table covers and all this stuff because she's just the type where she just likes to host events. So we did Thanksgiving at her house one year, and it was so nice. She moved all the furniture in the basement, had all of the tables set up. The basement had its own like kitchenette down there. So we had all the food and everything set up, buffet style, which you know how you do Thanksgiving. I don't know why I'm explaining that. It was really nice. And then after the entire family, I'm talking like, this is like immediate family, but still there were a lot of us. Like I'm talking 30 plus people came to her house, ate, watched TV, hung out, did all of that. And after all was said and done, everybody left. So my aunt was stuck with doing all of the dishes, like we were children at the time. Like I said, I was a teenager at the time, like maybe not even a teenager. I may have been like 12. I do remember being in middle school, but I don't remember if it was 6th or 7th grade. So I was like 11 or 12. So I'm not thinking about it at the time. All I know is when my dad say, hey, it's time to go, it's time to go, right? So we left and we didn't even think about the fact that nobody helped clean up. So she got stuck having to clean plates and clean up, all the mess that was made from like the kids that dropped food on the floor and all of that by herself. Like we almost not like tore up her house, but like, kids make a mess. And she had to clean all of that up by herself. Now, fast forward, 10, 20, not 10, 20, like 10 plus years in the future. And it's Thanksgiving again. And my grandma was like, hey, why don't we do Thanksgiving at this aunt's house? She's like, we had a really nice time. Everything was really well put together. I think like the next few years, everybody kind of just did like smaller things. Like I said, my parents were military. My aunt actually in the story was, actually both my aunts were military. My mom was military, dad military. So, over time we moved. So there were like several years where we were all in different states. So we just did small Thanksgivings within the family. But, all the grandkids and everybody grew up and we were, wanting to put together Thanksgiving again. Now, at this point, we're all adults and some of the adults have children. So there are even more people. So my grandmother suggests that we go back and do it at my aunt's house because she has the biggest house of everyone in the family and she's the only one who has enough room. And I remember being at my aunt's house and because I picked my grandma up from the airport and I was, driving her. She was going to stay with my dad. But we were going to visit my aunt because she wanted to talk to my aunt about doing Thanksgiving there. So I'm sitting there listening to the whole conversation. And my aunt says, I don't have any problem hosting Thanksgiving. But she said, we're going to have to do a potluck this year. She said, I'm not going to be the one responsible for cooking because it's way too many people. She said, we're going to have to do a potluck. And she says, I need a committee of people who are going to stay behind to help clean up because it was too much for me to do all that by myself the last time. Sounds fair. Like, I really don't see an issue with that. To me, it sounds fair. So I don't know, what my grandma didn't like about that. I don't know what about that struck her the wrong way. But we get in the car and we're driving to my dad's house. And she calls my other aunt and she's like, well, I guess we're going to have to find somewhere else to do Thanksgiving. So-and-so said she don't want us at her house because we, tore her house up and she didn't want to be responsible for all those people. And I'm just sitting there listening like, what? Like, that's not at all what she said. And then we get to my dad's house and she's telling this same like bogus side of the story to my dad. And my dad was like, well, that's okay. He said, I know I have the smallest house of everyone, but we can do it here. He's like, I don't care. Everybody just find a place to sit down and eat and then, watch a little TV and go home. Like, it's really not that big of a deal. Like, my dad is the only guy. Like, he has all sisters. So he's like super laid back. He's like, y'all do too much with all that bickering and going back and forth. Like, it really doesn't matter, you know? And he was like, if it's really that big of a problem, everybody can just do Thanksgiving at their house and we can get together somewhere else and you know, hang out and fellowship or whatever later, right? And I just remember my grandma telling him the story and being like, but isn't that so selfish? And then she looks at me and she was like, isn't that what she said? And I was like, no. And coincidentally, my little brother was with us too. He was riding with us too. He was riding with me to go pick her up. He was with me at Aunt Debbie's house. And I was like, no. And she was like, what? She was like, what? She was like, you didn't hear her say that? I was like, no. So she looks at my little brother. Now, my little brother is 8 years younger than me. So I'm an adult. He's still a teenager in high school at this point. He's still a child. So she looks to him for confirmation. And my little brother, being very, very much like my dad, who is like, I don't get into all the bickering. My little brother agrees with me and was like, no, that's not what was said. Like, no, I don't remember her saying that. So she gets mad and she's like, well, y'all just weren't paying attention. No, we weren't. We were. So we end up having Thanksgiving at my dad's house. You know, everything was fine. You know, it was a little cramped, but, you know, it's family, so it's all good. And my aunt comes, she drives to my dad's house and she's kind of asking, like, why are we doing it here when, you know, and why are we all cramped up and doing it here? Right? And everybody kind of gets quiet and doesn't say anything. And then my grandma makes up some excuse like, oh, well, you know, my dad, you know, really just wanted, I'm trying to keep from saying names. She's like, oh, well, my dad just really wanted to have it at his house this year. And we haven't done it at his house in a long time because we used to like rotate back in the day. And so she was like, you know, we just decided to do it here. And my aunt was like, okay. And I remember like one of my cousins that I'm still close with, you know, to this day, looking at me and being like, that don't even make sense. And I was like, she's lying. I said, you know how grandma is. I said, grandma was making a fuss, telling everybody, you know, that, you know, your mom said XYZ, which is not even really what happened. So she was the one who kind of orchestrated us having to have it here. So my cousin went and told my aunt, and my aunt came and asked me, and she was like, what did she tell people happened? And so I told my aunt, and my aunt went back and confronted my grandma, and it became like this big mess. And then everybody got mad at me, specifically my older sister got mad at me, saying that I was starting family drama. I was starting family drama? I was starting family drama. I'm not the one who was lying. I'm not the one who was making up stories. I'm not the one who was spreading false narratives. I'm not the one who's pitting family members against each other. But I'm the one that started all the family drama because I told the truth about what actually happened. And I was like, you know what? I'm done with this. Like, I'm so done with this, right? And I could just tell so many stories, not even just about my grandma, about like other family members. Because I feel like growing up in that environment with an elder, you know, who behaved in such manner that a lot of the girls tend to mimic that behavior, you know. So I have other family members that mimic my grandma's behavior, where they make up stories to tell other family members, and they gossip about other family members. They'll call other family members, talk to them just to get details about what's going on in their life, just so they can turn around and gossip. And it's so petty because like I can't stand whenever someone calls me and they're like, oh, I got to tell you something, but make sure you don't tell nobody else. I'm sorry, I'm busy right now. I'll call you back later. Okay, make sure you call me back. I will call you back first thing. Yeah, I'm not calling you back. I'm not calling you back. Because if you're calling me and the first thing out of your mouth is, ooh, guess what I heard, but make sure you don't repeat it. Either it's a lie or you're gossiping about something that someone confided and trusted in you when they told you this. And it's ridiculous. It is so ridiculous. And I have a very specific family member who does little things and plays little games and makes up little lies and treats me one way, you know, in front of family, but treats me an entirely different way behind closed doors. And I just recently cut off this specific family member because I'm tired of it. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like when you're in a relationship and your partner is competing with you, it's a little bit easier to see. I feel like when you have friendships where they are competing, and even with friendships, it sometimes is hidden, right? Because these are people who are supposed to love you and care about you and want the best for you. But I feel like with friendships and with relationships, even though it may take time, because when it's someone who's supposed to care about you, you don't want to think, you tend to excuse behavior. You tend to look past red flags because you want to see the best in these people. But when it's family, it's like a whole different ball game. Like when it's family, we're going from chess to checkers because this is an environment that you grew up in. And I see, even looking at the way some of my family members move, how they've normalized the behavior that was shown in the environment that we grew up in. And I'm like, y'all have normalized this so much that you don't even see that what you're doing is not normal. Like, please go talk to somebody and not each other, because all you're going to do is talk about each other behind each other's backs. Go talk to somebody. Go sit down. Go talk to somebody you have to make an appointment with, because all this messiness is uncalled for. You know? All of this and it's not even like, it sounds petty because I'm just talking about family members being messy, but it goes so much deeper than that. I mean, all of this backstabbing, you know, saying that, oh, I'm going to do this for you and I'm going to do that, intentionally giving people wrongful information or intentionally withholding information. You know what I mean? Playing little silly games. It is so beyond me. And, you know, like I said, I stopped going to family events a long time ago. So I don't even care that invitations and things aren't being passed. I don't even care that my grandma reached out to my sister in October of last year and asked her to send me an email invitation, because she sent out email invitations. And because I had like Yahoo back in the day, I used to love my Yahoo. I had so much stuff that was tagged, you know, or associated with my Yahoo account. So when it ended up coming down with the virus, I had to like switch over to a different email account. And I hated that. So like a lot of family members that I never passed, because like you don't typically email family. You pick up the phone, you call, you know, new age, you text, whatever, but you don't typically email family. So I didn't notify family members when my old email came down with the virus. So family members had been trying to email me and either were getting like spam emails in return or like no response because I had to shut that email down. Right? So my grandma sends an email invitation to my sister back in October, and I don't know why she just didn't pick up the phone and call me or text me and ask me for my new email address. But sometimes I feel like people do things because like my grandma's messy, and to a certain extent she knows my sister's messy because she's mentioned things before. So to a certain extent, people move a certain way because they know it's going to have a certain outcome, you know? So she emails my sister and tells my sister to forward me the email for the family reunion, or the mini family reunion that they had this summer. And I got the invitation literally like less than a month before the reunion was supposed to take place. Meanwhile, everybody else got it back in October, months ago. And I don't even care. Because even if you would have given me the invitation like you were supposed to, I still wouldn't have shown up. Because I'm not playing these games with adults. I was forced to have to deal with that environment as a child. But I refuse to play these games with adults. Grow up, please. Y'all, I cannot explain. I don't know if anybody else like has dealt with this or felt. Matter of fact, I know for a fact people have. Because the whole reason I'm doing this video is because I saw that YouTube stitch about tell me a time where you realized that your family member didn't even really like you. And every single stitch that I watch, and the one episode that I watch, because I know people continue and it goes on and on, but every single stitch that I saw were women either talking about their sisters, their female cousins, their own mothers, their grandmothers, their aunts. But it was all women talking about other women in their family, primarily most of them, 90% of them being their very own sisters. And I get that. I get that. I get that. So I know a lot of people get that. But I'm like, I can't deal with this anymore. I can't deal with this anymore. And it was hard because it's family. And it's so routine that when a family member calls or a family member texts, it's like such second nature to pick up the phone and be like, oh, hey, how's it going? Respond. What are you doing? Oh, nothing. Why? What do you need? It's like second nature because it's family. But I have to tell y'all, the level up spiritually, the level up that I felt when I finally got to the point where I started ignoring family's phone calls, ignoring family's messages, ignoring family's emails, the level up that I felt was even more significant than the level up I had when I learned to forgive myself. The biggest part of my spiritual journey until this moment has been me learning to forgive myself, not even forgiving others, but forgiving myself for the mistakes that I've made and for staying in situations for way longer than I should have. And for going back and spending so much time thinking about what I woulda, coulda, should have done. Having to let that go was significant for me, but not as significant as finally learning to block and ignore these backstabbing family members. So if this message, and this is a very personal one, so I get that this may not resonate with everybody, and I hope this doesn't resonate with a lot of people. I hope that a lot of people haven't grown up in toxic environments, but I know some have. And if you need to go get therapy to find someone that you need to talk to, I wholeheartedly encourage you to do that. But for someone out there, don't let that person if you need to talk to someone, even if it's a friend, a trusted friend, don't let that person be one of them family members. Do not. Do not. But y'all, this is the message for today, okay? That family first mentality can be toxic if you were in a toxic family environment. Y'all, thank you for listening. Bye.